Hello everyone. I am Dr. Sawan Giridhar Dharmpuriwar, Associate Professor, Department of English, Vidyasagar Kala Mahavidyalay, Khairi Bijewada Ramtek. Today, we are going to learn an amusing story, The Gold Frame, written by R.K. Laxman. Before we move on to the story, we will try to learn a little about the writer of the story. The story, The Gold Frame, is written by R.K. Laxman, who was born in the year 1921 and died in 2015. He was a great cartoonist and a writer. He is famous for his cartoon character, Common Man. He worked for many eminent journals, which includes Swaraj, The Hindu, Blitz, Free Press Journal, and the Times of India. He worked for the Times of India for 50 years. He was famous for his cartoon column, You Said It, through which he commented on the current issues in a humorous way from the perspective of a common man. He was honored with many prestigious awards, which includes Raman Magsaysay Award, Padma Bhushan, and Padma Vibhushan. The story, The Gold Frame, is a story of a frame maker. It is a story about framing a photograph of an old man. The author comments on the human tendency to fall for the false prestige and love for pomp and show in a humorous way. The twist in the end makes the story more interesting. Now, we shall begin the story. But before that, take a look on which are the various important characters in the story. The story has only two characters. The first one is the Datta, who is the frame maker, and second character in the story is a customer. Datta is a main character in the story. He is a frame maker and he is owner of the shop, the Modern Frameworks. He is a silent, hard-working man and always bent on his work in his shop. He is continuously busy in his work of frame making, and name of his shop is the Modern Frameworks. Datta was the owner of the shop Modern Frameworks. This shop was situated between a medicine store and a radio repair shop. His shop was just like an extra large wooden packing. His shop was perfect example of all possible mess. All the things related to frameworking business were scattered everywhere in the shop. Cardboard pieces were there, sheets of glass were there, nails were there, glue bottles were there, bits of wood and other such material lay everywhere in the shop. And Datta could be seen fixed up there, bent over his work as one of the pieces in the shop. Sometimes when he tries to find out a glass cutter or a pencil in all this mess, he could never find it. Many a times he had to stand up and shake his dhoti vigorously to dislodge the lost object, and then only he could find that particular thing. All the walls of his shops were covered by framed pictures. We can see that means all the three walls in his shop were covered with the pictures, his framed pictures. These pictures were of the gods, saints, hockey players, children, cheap prints of famous painting Mona Lisa, national leaders, wedding couples, Urdu calligraphy, and many such pictures. And those pictures were what we can say hanging on the walls of Datta's shop. One day, a customer A tall, rustic-looking man came to his shop. As usual, he has brought some photograph with him, and he has a photograph of an old man. The photograph might be belonging to one of his great ancestors. He has tremendous respect for this photograph. Initially, as for his habit, Datta did not pay any attention to the man. After some time, the customer made his presence known again. Datta asked him what type of frame he would like. Means he has a photograph, and that's why Datta tried to tell about various kinds of frames available in his shop and asked that what type of frame that man would like. Then the person who has, what we can say, very much respect about that old man, he started describing the greatness of the old man. He told about his nobility, his personality, his compassion, his charity, and his generous nature, and he wanted a frame that can do justice to the photograph of this great personality. But Datta, when he took a look of that photograph, he found that the photograph the customer has brought with him was just a common photograph. It could be a portrait of a grandfather. It could be a portrait of some philanthropist. It could be a photo of some social worker with whiskers and a top heavy turban. Rather, Datta thought that it was a portrait, it was a photograph, it was a picture of a common old man of those days. He did not find any of the speciality of what we can say in that particular photograph, but rather that customer who has brought that photograph, that customer has tremendous respect about that grand old man, and he told Datta that this man is like a god in his home, and that's why he wants a suitable, perfect frame for the photograph of that great personality. Then, once again, the customer was asked by Datta that what kind of frame that customer wants. But that customer was completely confused when Datta has shown him the various kinds of frame, and that's why Datta, that customer, was not able to select one proper frame among that. And then Datta, what we can say, when told about the various types of frames, such as the plain frame, the wooden frame, the lacquer frame, the gold frame, the plastic frame, the enamel painted frame. And then when he found that the customer was a little bit confused, Datta once again tried to help him and suggested the customer to select a frame with a profusion of gold leaves and winding creepers. The customer very much liked that gold frame suggested by the Datta, and then he decided that, okay, he will, what we can say, frame the photograph of the old man into that, what we can say, beautiful gold frame. After that, Datta asked next question to the customer that what kind of, what we can say, mount that customer wants. And customer has been shown by Datta the plain mount and cut mount. Customer was once again confused. Datta helped the customer, showing the different mounts and suggested to choose cut mount, and it will look more beautiful, elegant, and attractive. By looking to a picture on the wall framed in cut mount, the customer selected the cut mount and inquired about the cost of the framing. Datta answered that the gold frame, cut mount, glass, and framing work will cost total 17 rupees. It was very clear that the cost of the framing was 17 rupees. First of all, the customer tried to bargain, but Datta did not pay any attention towards his words, and at last customer was ready to pay 17 rupees as the cost of the framing. When customer asked that when will the frame be ready, at this Datta answered he can take the delivery of the frame after 2 weeks. Datta had lot of experience about the customers, and he knew very well that customers never come punctually. Some of them come too early. Some of them come months later, and some of them never come to take the delivery of the frame. he had a box in his shop filled with many unclaimed pictures lying in dust and cockroaches and silverfish feeding on them. And he had made it a rule, he has made it a habit to start working on a frame unless the customer come to him at least twice and inquire about the frame. 10 days later, once again, the customer, a tall, rustic looking man, came to Datta's shop and he inquired about the frame. He asked that whether that frame was ready or not. And on the very next day, next morning, Datta started working on the photograph of the old man given by the customer. He kept the photograph on the wooden plank. He just, what we can say, tried to collect all the material needed for the sake of framing the photograph. And first thing that he looked for was the pencil. And as usual, that pencil was missing in the mess of the shop. He looked everywhere, but he was unable to find that pencil. And then, as per his habit, he stood up and took his last move and shook the folds of his dhoti violently, that he upset a tin containing white enamel paint. The paint fell on the photograph of the old man. Datta was very much shocked to see this. He was not able to understand what he should do now. And then Datta stood just transfixed and started looking at the picture. For some time, Datta sat holding his head. After some time, he started looking at the pictures which were hanging on the walls of his shops. There were many photographs, those were hanging on the walls of his shop. And then in one of the photographs, he found similarity with the photograph of the old man. But then before that, when Datta, what we can say, was not able to understand what he should do now, in a hurry, he just tried to clean that particular pictures. And when he tried to clean that picture by, what we can say, rubbing it, and when he was rubbing that picture in a hurry, he found that he removed thin strips of filmy coating from the surface of the photograph, and he has made that photograph more worse. It was completely contaminated. The turban and the half face of the old man was gone. The photograph had become more worse with the dots of black enamel. And then Datta was completely in a question, what we can say, tension, that what could he do now? The photograph has been destroyed. It has been, what we can say, become worse. The face of the old man has gone. And what could be his next step? What he will answer to the customer when he will come to his shop to take the delivery of the photograph? And now, for some time, he started thinking over it. And then when he thought for some time, he just, what we can say, took a look at the various kinds of photographs. Those were framed and those were hanging on the walls of his shop. And then when he started looking one by one to them, after some time, he, what we can say, he found a likeness in one of the photographs, and he found that the picture which has been destroyed by him and one of the pictures which was hanging on the wall of his shop has little bit similarity. And then all of a sudden an idea came into his mind. He brought down the old wooden box filled with the unclaimed pictures. And then when he opened that box, he found that the silverfish and cockroaches were running all over the pictures which were situated in the box. And then Datta, one by one, started searching, looking for the pictures, and he started to find out the similarity between the destroyed picture and the pictures which were unclaimed and lying in the box. And then when he was looking at the pictures one by one, after searching for some time, he selected a photograph which could play double for the damaged photograph of the old man. Datta became happy and he knew very well what to do next. He worked upon the photograph for 2 hours. And when he finished the framing the photograph, and then what we can say, when he worked continuously after the, what we can say, after the concentrated work of 2 hours, after working on that photograph for 2 hours, he, when he finished the work of framing the photograph in beautiful gold frame, was looking very attractive, and result was a grand success for him, and he could find the similarity between the original photograph and the photograph which has just now framed in a gold frame. Then perhaps Datta has taken one of the greatest risks in the works of frame makers. By doing so, he also thought about the consequences. He also thought about the scene when the customer would come to take the delivery of the frame. He just, what we can say, make the rehearsal that what could be his possible answers when the customer will say that whatever photograph he has given for framing and whatever photograph has been delivered by the Datta did not have any similarity. He has changed the original photograph. He thought that he will not admit his mistake and ask the customer to take the frame or throw it, because I have done my work properly. I have framed the same photograph which has been given by the customer. The days that followed were filled with suspense, tension, and anxiety. And then the customer, means the Datta who was waiting for that customer did not came on the appointed day. The customer who came 2 days later than the appointed day, and he demanded the photograph of the old man. The customer asked about the frame. Datta told that the frame is ready and he can take the delivery of the frame. He gave the framed photograph in a beautiful gold frame to the customer. Datta was holding his breath in tension and preparing to act according to the reaction of the customer. He was waiting that what will be the reaction of customer. Will he recognize that I have changed the picture, I have framed some other picture of the other old man? But then customer who was looking at the frame, who looked at the frame for a while, and then he asked Datta what he has done. By his question, Datta was very much sure that the customer has discovered his mistake, discovered his trick, and now he has to face the consequences. But the customer told that he has asked Datta to frame the photograph in oval cut mount, and Datta has mistakenly framed it in square mount. Datta was very much relieved, very much happy that customer did not notice the original mistake, did not notice that the original photograph of the old man was changed, and he was only noticing the cut mount, only noticing the difference between the cut mount and the square mount. And then the customer was very much sure that whatever photograph which has been given by him, the same photograph has been framed by Datta very beautifully in the gold frame. But the only mistake Datta has committed, that he framed the photograph in square mount in place of cut mount. Thus, the story ends with a twist in a humorous way. We can say that the story which deals with the theme of exposing the hypocrisy and love of false prestige of typical Indian middle class. How we people run after, what we can say, the false show and the pomp. The author very well pictures the dilemma of a frame maker in a humorous way, who had spoiled the picture by, what we can say, with the, because of that his mistake, and paint was thrown on that particular photograph. That photograph was spoiled by Datta, but then he tried to make up all the mess, and he framed another picture in a beautiful gold frame which was not recognized by the customer. The twist given by the writer at the end adds humor to the story and makes it more amusing and interesting. So with this, the story comes to an end. I hope you might have enjoyed the story and understood it. Thank you, all of you.